Hey everybody, hope you're having a great week. We're going to continue on talking about identity, and specifically in our series entitled Being. And I wanted to review one scripture from this past Sunday that I think is so crucial because it describes from God's own point of view the very nature, his very nature. It's found in Exodus chapter 34, and it says in verse 6, "As he passed in front of Moses, proclaiming the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation." You know, as I read this passage, I think it's so incredibly important that we understand who God is. Every one of us, we talked about this on Sunday, every one of us comes to our relationship with God with a particular filter. And that filter very often comes from our own experiences in our families of origin, with our own parents, the way that perhaps we were raised, our understanding even of the metaphor of God being our Father is influenced by our own experiences in our own homes with our own fathers and that sort of thing. And so I think it's very important to take this passage and really break it down and understand, hey, what is it about God that we need to know? What do we need to understand that may or may not be in line with how we have understood a relationship with, say, our own parents in the past, and how that might influence our relationship with God. And so as I look at this, we talked about this on Sunday, but I want to break this down. There are five, what I would call sort of categories, or five dichotomies, if you will, that are present in this passage that I want us to discuss tonight. And I'll briefly outline them, and then I'll leave some questions on the screen for you to talk about. I think this is going to be a very, very healthy conversation for us. First of all, from this passage, we see there's this dichotomy between being reward or punishment oriented. You know, is God a father? Is he leaning one way, or does he lean more towards punishment? Does he lean more towards reward? What is his inclination? What's his orientation? And I want us to think about this. You know, your own family of origin, what was it like? I mean, did your own family, your own parents, or those who raised you, were they oriented more towards finding things wrong with you, correcting you, this sort of thing, punishing you perhaps? You know, were they oriented in that way? Hopefully all of our parents both rewarded and punished us, but what was the lean? You know, I think this influences us in the way that we see God. Certainly, I believe God was a heavy reward lean, but it doesn't mean he doesn't punish. And so, you know, even as the scripture here says, you know, that God is compassionate, that implies, and gracious, it implies this desire to reward versus this desire to punish. And so we need to wrestle with that. We see also this dichotomy between being angry and being merciful. You know, is God an angry God, or is he merciful towards us? Thinking about our family of origins, was anger a significant part of our upbringing? Or was there a lot of anger in the house? Again, everybody gets angry, but I'm talking about an orientation. Is the general orientation and posture towards anger, or is it towards giving mercy? When you messed up as a young child or in your home of origin, was the tendency to give mercy, or was there anger in response? You know, I think that anger produces all kinds of insecurities, and certainly God is not an angry God, although he does get angry. His inclination is towards mercy towards us, and I think again it's important to differentiate these things. Not that God's never angry, but that he's not oriented towards anger. The third dichotomy would be a faithful consistency versus being unreliable. You know, God, as the scripture describes, is somebody who is faithfully consistent. He is there. He's not unreliable. As we think about our families of origin, perhaps we can consider through that lens. You know, was our family of origin a place that was safe? Was there consistency? Was there faithfulness to us and to our family? Was there a spirit that was created that said, "Hey, you are mine. We are a family," and there was safety in that understanding, or was it unpredictable, unreliable? You never know from one day to the next what you're going to get. The characteristic of God is His enduring faithfulness, and He's always there. He's never changing. His love for us has no end. There's this consistency that brings stability and brings really life and empowers us because we know He's there and we know that He loves us. The fourth dichotomy is the difference between being quick to forgive and holding a grudge. Again, thinking about our families of origin, was our family of origin a place where grudges were held, maybe not spoken about, maybe they're the silent treatment, being in the doghouse for lengthy periods of time, this kind of thing, or was there a quickness to forgive any kinds of offense or mistakes that were made? This will influence our view of God, because if we lived in an environment perhaps where grudges and things were held and there wasn't a quickness to forgive, we may actually project that onto God and think that, hey, I'm not good enough, I'm not able, He doesn't like me, simply because that's the way we've been treated in our lives. And yet that's not the way God is. And then the final dichotomy we see here is an accountability for behavior versus being overly permissive. It does say at the end that God does not let sin go unpunished, and so there is an accounting for our behavior, and God certainly is no pushover, as we said on Sunday. He's certainly not overly permissive and just like, hey, just go do what you want. I don't care. I'm just a big happy teddy bear in the sky, and I got you back. Look, He is always there for us, but yet He still has a goal for us. He wants us to grow. There is an expectation that we will live into the image in which He created us, and so it's not being overly permissive, but there is an accountability for our behavior, and that's important. Again, thinking about our family of origin, I think for some of us, perhaps we lived in we grew up in a place where there is a high accountability for our behavior. You might say too much accountability for behavior, or perhaps you grew up in a family where there was very little by way of expectation or accountability, and it was very, very permissive. That's going to influence our view of God. And so as we read this passage, we see that God is a God who leans towards reward. We see that God is a God who is mercy-oriented, not anger-oriented. We see a God who is faithfully consistent. He's not unreliable. We see a God who's quick to forgive, doesn't hold grudges towards us. But yet we see a God who holds us accountable for our behavior and is not overly permissive. And so as we think about those things, I want us to compare that picture to the way perhaps that we were raised in our homes of origin. And I've put these down on a slide so that you can see them. Here's the discussion I want us to think about. Considering our family of origin, let's look at those 5 areas, and let's consider, and let's have some deep conversation. What was our upbringing like, and how does that line up with our view of God, and how might that affect our view of God? Let's have some deep discussion. I know there's 5 questions. There's a lot to talk about here. You may not get through this in one group meeting, but I think this is a very, very valuable conversation for us to have as we grow and really strive to become more like Christ and grow in our image, into His image. I do believe this is an important conversation for us to have. So please take the time now to discuss these things.